ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
So can you receive me loud and clear?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Welcome back. A very warm welcome back to Anmol Singh Rode, who actually smashed apart the myth of Marathas rebuilding their bar sahib for us last time. And just as an update, I suppose if we do die and some mythological deities exist, they will really be after us hardcore because the amount of heartburn we gave their followers is just amazing.
Yeah, you're not wrong there.
No, not wrong. And they were so furious about it. They made up these false claims. There's a lady, a journalist, I suppose, named Ashmita Nagpal in Maharashtra, and she wrote a article during the coronavirus on Baba Deep Singh, defending their bar side. They actually falsely referenced her, saying that she talks about Marathas rebuilding their bar side. This is a page called Mighty Marathas on Instagram. She never does. I found the original source. And then when they got caught out on that, they actually had to run around and find another text, Jaswantalal Mehta's Modern History of India, something along those lines. Anyhow, I also managed to obtain the original text, had a talk with one of Mehta's students. It turns out that he never mentions Marathas rebuilding their bar sahib, rather he deredes them for not becoming Sikhs and ushering in a new age for the subcontinent.
I don't fault him for that. I certainly seen a recent tweet by, I forget what his name was, but he had tweeted in Hindi as well that it is Sikhism to save the Dharam and the nation. And he was getting quite a lot of hate for that, but on the side, the Sangat was applauding him on. So yeah, that's just the situation, the happenstance that we happen to be in. And of course, I mean, this propaganda doesn't mean absolutely it has no value to us. So for myself, I will go through thick and thin to stick up and stand up against it. Because anytime you mention something to degrade what they have, you just see how much they struggle and how much they flop around to try and come up with something new. It's hilarious every time.
It is pretty hilarious when you go to the length of falsifying evidence to argue otherwise, but your own evidence slaps you in the face. I mean, if it wasn't so serious, it would have made it onto America's Funniest Home Videos. I'm sure if I submitted that for America's Funniest Home Videos, I would be a millionaire by now.
Right.
But anyhow, today, what we want to discuss, well, what we were requested to discuss, and I felt this was something pretty intriguing which should be discussed anyhow, is the history of the sect or the cohort among the Sikhs known as the Akali Nihangs. Now, if you want to unlock the history of the Akali Nihangs today, you have to traverse a whole minefield. There is a emotional attachment to certain narratives. There is misreading of 19th century texts. Then there is an elaborate oral tradition, which it seems is only a modern construction. You have certain religious texts, which are allegedly religious texts, which you suddenly discover might not be what they're made out to be. And then suddenly you come to this one point in time where the whole history, the whole authentic history, can be unlocked if you were to understand the rise and eventual fall of the body known as Misl Shahid.
Yeah, definitely. This is quite an intriguing topic because such a cohort or a co-organization, one would say, of the Akali Nihangs. It's a very interesting, such an intriguing, such a fascinating story it is of these what Europeans routinely refer to in their texts as fanatics, or the crack brigade of eventually at one point of the Sikh imperial army of the Lahore Darbar. It's so fascinating. It's so intriguing to try and unravel and just see what the basis is. And it's really the original good spot where to really begin is of the of the Shahida Misl.
Right. And as a slight background, all this really starts. I mean, this wouldn't really be in existence if it wasn't for Nawab Kapoor Singh. Am I right?
Definitely, yeah, without a doubt.
So, one thing which is really not known today is that around 1734, 1735, after he created the Buddha Dal and the Tarna Dal. Now, one thing to clarify here, when we talked with his descendants, that episode is available in Who Was Nawab Kapoor Singh, they basically confirmed that the terms or even the bodies, the Buddha Dal and Tarna Dal, did not exist before Nawab Kapoor Singh. And you, as a historian, could probably appreciate this fact that today this mythology has taken over that the Buddha Dal and Tarna Dal existed. Well, the Buddha Dal at least existed from the 6th Guru's time. Some push it back even to this mythological age of Satyuga, where Chandi manifested it, or Dushdaman manifested it. There are, several different myths about it. But speaking factually with their feet on the ground, basically it did not exist prior to Nawab Kapoor Singh. So he divides the Panth into two bodies, the Buddha Dal and the Tarna Dal. Now, obviously, the Buddha Dal, as we know, is the parliamentary, the policy making, and the preaching body of the Panth, right?
Yep, the Buddha Dal would have no existence prior to the passing of Jatadar Dewan Baba Darbara Singh, Nawab Kapoor Singh Virk for administrative purposes, seeing just how quickly um, and how numerous Sikhs were becoming across East Punjab in particular, would have segmented these two different parts in the Buddha Dal and the Tarna Dal in 1734. And it is true, the Buddha Dal were given the commandment to act as this sort of um, parliamentary political controlling force situated particularly in the Majha.
Right. And one thing which most people do not realize, and this was actually brought to light later by Hariram Gupta, who did, considerable research on the history of the Misls and the Buddha Dal and Tarna Dal based on Persian records and other contemporary sources, is that for better outreach, I suppose, and to sort of take the responsibility entirely off his own shoulders, Nawab Kapoor Singh divided the Buddha Dal into 5 groups. One was led by him. This was the main group because he was the Panth's president. We can say that was his position. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, definitely. He had that sort of that zeal in towards administrative authority from the from Amritsar.
Yep. And the second wing was led by Gurbaksh Singh. The third wing was led by Bhag Singh. The fourth wing was led by Gurdial Singh. And now the fifth wing, this is very interesting, is Ratan Singh Pangu, towards the end of his Shri Gur Panth Prakash, refers to the fact that he wrote his Panth Prakash. He made 2 copies, the 2 original copies, sitting inside Sham Singh's Bunga, his mansion, which is right next to Darbar Sahib. Sham Singh, he references, was one of the commanders of the Buddha Dal, who actually was the predecessor to Jassa Singh Aluwalia in commanding one of the wings. And this same Sham Singh actually fought his way to Rajasthan, and from Rajasthan he sent aid to the Khalsa in Punjab. His daughter eventually married Mehtab Singh, who is the Mehtab Singh of Bhai Sukha Singh Mehtab Singh fame, who came and slew Massa Rangar for discrediting the Darbar Sahib in Amritsar. Mehtab Singh's son was Rai Singh, who was a martyr for the Panth, and Rai Singh's son in turn was Ratan Singh Pangu.
Yeah, this is the lineage that Nyangpai Ratan Singh Pangu claims. Of course, it's his personal lineage, and it's something that he is more than adamant on sharing. I believe it is in his introduction somewhere. But yeah, this sort of gives the basis of what Pangu would go on to write.
But with the Tarna Dal, Nawab Kapoor Singh has another problem because the Buddha Dal basically has a structure here. So all the non-combatants, intellectuals, basically Sikhs about 40 years of age. So really we are talking about people who know the arts of war, but who are warriors second, something else first. They're in the Buddha Dal. So obviously there is a era of maturity in the Buddha Dal. If any conflict happens, it suddenly ceases because everyone is mature. They share the same vision. Tarna Dal, which is intended as the Panth's military, is a different story altogether. And if I understand correctly, as soon as he creates the Tarna Dal, the Singhs within the Tarna Dal suddenly start fighting with each other. Am I right?
Yes, they go on some sort of internal combustion as to like where they become situated, particularly in the Doaba and the Malwa. They immediately, for some reason, go at each other's necks and try and seek internal power to destroy. It's quite difficult to try and dissect.
And I mean, you would agree nothing much has changed today, has it?
Absolutely not. No, the
Everyone is
Pontic
still at each
stance,
other's throats.
the Pontic stance is still there. Yes.
Yep. And so obviously Kapoor Singh is the first Jathedar. If you look at the proper lineage of the Buddha Dal and the Tarna Dal, he sits down with all the others, the wiser ones from Guru Gobind Singh Ji's days, the few survivors, and obviously the veteran warriors from Banda Singh's days. He sits down and he, obviously has a bit of a talk with them, like, what in hell do we do with these young, clowns running around? Well, how do we control them? How do we rein them in? And suddenly they come up with an idea that maybe we also divide the Tarna Dal into 5 different regiments under your command. So the first regiment is Jatha Shahid. Now, Shahid obviously means martyrs, group, and it's placed under the command of one young warrior named Deep Singh and another named Karam Singh. Most of the Nihang veterans are in this Jatha, and they have their own regimental standard, which flies at the Akal Takht. And the Urdu historian Said Nawazi Shali, I think that's his name, he actually mentions that Karam Singh was also the grandson of another very famous Deep Singh, and this is Baba Deep Singh. Now, the problem we have is that obviously the Buddha Dal has all the senior Singhs in it, right?
Yes, it's a basis of an elderly brigade or a military organization of seniority. Yes.
So does it make sense that Baba Deep Singh, who's probably in his early 50s at this time, the Baba Deep Singh of Sabo Ki Talwandi, do you think he would actually be the same Deep Singh as the Tarna Dal Jatha Shahid Deep Singh, or there is a fundamental difference between both which has been confused over time?
I'm definitely under the belief that this has been mistranslated and confused over time. I'm firmly from the stance is that these happen to have been two different Deep Singhs. Baba Deep Singh, of course, a veteran of Baba Banda Singh Bahadur's revolution. He must have been anywhere in his 50s around at that time of the establishment of the Buddha Dals and the Tarna Dals. So it would be very difficult to imagine him being a part of a more younger brigade. Of course, stationment out of Takht Sri Damdama Sahib, Talbandi Sabbo, which is the Malwa region where the Tarna Dal Jathas would have had been roaming, could have made him possibly an advisory to them. But because of the gyan and the knowledge where he was centered out of, upheld to him by Guru Gobind Singh's interactions there, it would be difficult to really attribute him to the Tarna Dal. It's really safe to say that he was with his Jatha a part of the Buddha Dal.
I mean, one thing which we need to look at down here, obviously, and you mentioned Guru Gobind Singh Ji's interactions. So by Nawab Kapoor Singh's time, most of these Sikh veterans from Baba Banda Singh's days and even earlier from Guru Gobind Singh Ji's days, most of them are a dwindling number. They're dying or they're falling in battle. And he has a problem down here. The first one is that Amrit is given. Khande Ki Pahol has a very stringent criteria. If you don't meet the criteria, you're turned away in the first place. Second problem is that there are a growing number of Sikhs. The population is increasing. So how do you actually, prevent opportunists from hijacking the faith? So you need gatekeepers of the faith. And who else but, elderly Singhs like Bhai Mani Singh Shahid and Baba Deep Singh, who have actually met the last Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, interacted with Guru Tegh Bahadur as well. Maybe there are some who have actually seen Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, like Baba Darbara Singh, who's obviously, dead by this time. So it doesn't make, any sense that those gatekeepers of the Panth, those Singhs, those, Kaurs who have this whole tradition passed on to them from the gurus would suddenly be allowed to command, jathas which are going on the front line to fight and die. It just doesn't make any tactical or even strategic sense in the long run.
No, it doesn't add up to have them placed in such an area of difficulty. You talk about these veterans and just being around from the time of Guruji. It makes sense to have these people. Still, some names come to mind. Akali Maipa Gokor was down in Nanded, where she had left afterwards and found a sanction of her own. And even someone like Sant Baba Rocha Singh, who was out in Peshawar and who had lived until 115 years old. These are people that you would want to be, of course, gatekeeping the faiths, trying to keep things in line, especially with numbers growing so fast. You can see the quick decisions that Nawab Kapoor Singh had to have been making at these Sarbat Khalsas that were being called.
Yep, obviously. And then we come to another sticking point here before we move on. And I suppose this is something which has to be answered quite comprehensively. So today we have the Misl Shahid Tarnadal or Tarnadal Misl Shahid, whatever they claim themselves to be. Obviously, it's a misnomer given that the earliest evidence we have when we piece it together, it turns out that while they claim Baba Deep Singh to be the first Jathedar of Tarnadal, in reality, Baba Deep Singh was one of the main primary advisors of the Buddha Dal. He never had anything to do with the Tarnadal, given his age and his experience. And more or less, Nawab Kapoor Singh seems to have permanently stationed him at Bathinda, where he's actually, at Damdama side preparing future Akalis. Now, today the term used is Akali Nihang. So what many current modern day Nihangs argue is that there is a Singh, then there is a Nihang, then there is an Akali Nihang. So Akali is the one who is, recognized by the Farla Wali Dastar, and they have other prerogatives within the Nihang Jathas of today. However, historically looking at it, was this always the case, or there was some degree of difference between an Akali and a Nihang?
It's safe to say that there was a degree of differentiation. As we've shared, the Akalis must have had some imperative of being gatekeepers or knowledge holders, Gurmat Gyan, you could say, of keeping the Ityas and sharing of Sikhi together intact. Because the Sangat had grown so quickly and these numbers have been erupting right in front of Jathedar Nawab Kapoor Singh's face, there's this sort of differentiation was honestly required. And it's maybe something that the Akal Takht could have even been managing themselves, i.e. having Shahid Baba Deep Singh placed in Bathinda near Talwandi Sabo. So it's safe to say that to a great degree that these Akali gatekeepers would have been the upper echelon, whereas the Nihangs would have made the Aam Faujan, the common armymen, the common infantrymen.
So basically, what we can conclude is an Akali could be a Nihang, but not all Nihangs could be an Akali, because really there would have been Akalis in different, capabilities. There would have been Akalis preaching, Akalis, writing about the Guru Granth Sahib, and then obviously military Akalis, but then the military Akalis would be few and far between because of their age and experience. So really the system today of an Akali Nihang, that these are ranks, does not have any historic precedence. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's roughly along the lines of what should be shared. It's something you need to keep in mind about the Akalis that with age became more, and especially with the importance of what knowledge they'd had. Bear in mind that we've shared that these Akalis predominantly have had interactions with Guruji when before they had returned to Sachkhand. So this is something that we really need to keep in mind, that these Akalis would have been very precious as time gone on. So There's something that obviously the Panth would want to have intact and share and keep Sikhi growing with whatever prachars they had went on. This includes with Shahid Baba Deep Singh going on whatever trips he had in the Malwa region. One thing that quickly comes to mind myself is I'd shared Sant Baba Rocha Singh, who an Akali in his own right, for decades on decades was doing his own preaching tours in the Pahari Potwari region of West Punjab, North.
Yep. And going off that, can we also consider that Bhai Mani Singh would have been an Akali outside the military Akali complex, which has been stereotyped today?
To an extent, it's something that I've considered and I myself have tried to think on, because it's become nomenclature of just the Akali is within the Sikh Fauj military complex. So, but yet comes combined with the attribution of knowledge. And Bhai Mani Singh was exactly that, but there's a little bit of a distinction of him not necessarily always being um, a warrior per se, but this becomes untuned to the line of what we know as Sant Sipahi, right? Sant first, Sipahi second. So from that basis alone, you could push it to that he could have been an Akali, just a huge emphasis on the Sant or diplomacy side, as we've seen, which led up to his Shahidi in general.
So basically, Akalis were gatekeepers and preachers that were also charged with initiating people into the Khalsa after testing them, making Sikhs Sikh. But they had their own different roles because, obviously Baba Deep Singh was a warrior under Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Bhai Mani Singh, expert warrior, but he was more or less focused elsewhere at the time. So what we can say is that really the Akalis were like a pre-20th century SGPC. Is that what we're getting at?
Arguably so, yes. There's one thing I would like to mention before I do forget, not so I don't discredit Shahid Bhai Mani Singh. He did, in fact, undergo the military training that any Sikh Faujan would have. During his childhood, he was quite capable of Shastra Vidya and, of course, the Akhada wrestling that he had practiced. He was, in fact, trained in that for sure, without a doubt.
Yep. And obviously, each individual chooses their own reaction to whatever times confront them. So, moving on from there, is a conclusion to this little part at least. Would you say the term Nihang referred to all Sikh soldiers? For example, like today we say that Singh is a soldier and that Singh is a doctor. Could it be at the time they would say that Singh is a farmer, but that Singh is a Nihang to mean that he's a trained soldier?
I personally would want to say so even now, because Sikhi is not a class-based faith. So it would have been the common armyman, the common soldier, that who would have always been, tiyar par tiyar, ready to go. So that farmer would have been, had trained, had baptized, would have been a Nahang as well, the common person.
Yep, because I believe that the Nang was exclusively a military rank. Dr. Tillo actually told us in the Banda Singh episode that Nehang referred to mercenary, but it also seems to have referred to a particular rank among the Sikhs and not a sect like it's become today. Alongside, I also believe that Ratan Singh Pangu also calls Pai Taru Singh a Nehang. So the term really did not seem to have any one specific connotation. Rather, it was a militaristic term to generally describe a soldier. So when Pangu actually states that Jatha Shahida was full of Nihangs, we can safely conclude, and I would be interested in hearing your opinion on this, that Jatha Shahida being full of Nihangs actually meant it was full of veteran warriors. So it had the most warriors out of the other four Jathas, which the Tarnadal was divided into.
Yeah, that is a plausible conclusion there. It's things to keep in mind that it's so prevalent in any of the history available that the remaining of the Jathas eventually turned into Misls at the later Sarbat Khalsa, were all of Sardars. These happen to have been very new initiates. One Jatha that comes to mind, of course, is the Dallewal Jatha, eventually Dallewali Misl. But then Misldar Gulab Singh, born Gulaba Khatri, who had converted to Sikhi, received Amrit in the mid 1730s from Nawab Kapoor Singh himself. These are new. These are new Sardars, right? So it's very safe to say that with the Tarnadal and with the Jatha Shahidan would have been more or less the veteran soldiers.
Yep, and the other Jathas, it's interesting, is that after Jatha Shahid comes the Jatha Amritsariya, which are led by another Karam Singh. So there's another individual named Karam Singh and his brother Taram Singh, and these two are Qataris. So for all the people who shit on Qataris, here are two Qataris who would eventually go to lay down their lives for the Panth. The third Jatha, now this is where the confusion actually begins, is what Pangu calls Jatha Ansi. Now, Shamsher Khalsa is a history by Gyani Gyan Singh. And within the Shamsher Khalsa, Gyani Gyan Singh actually calls this Jatha Ansi is called Jatha Sahib Jadia. And Gyan Singh basically plagiarizes off Pangu in saying that Jatha Ansi or Jatha Sahib Jadia, as he puts it, consisted of the Guru's descendants and the descendants of other prominent Sikh personalities. Their main mission at the time seemed to have been just to preach Sikhi and bring more people into the Panth while preserving the Panth's historic heritage. But the mistake Gyani Gyan Singh makes is that he claims that this Jatha was led by the sons of Binod Singh. And obviously, as Dr. Tillo informed us, Binod Singh betrayed Banda Singh. So it seems pretty impossible for Nawab Kapoor Singh to give those individuals, that family, command of this Jatha. So the mystery is cleared up by Hariram Gupta, who, based on Persian sources, claims that this Jatha was led by one Jivan Singh. And basically, this Jatha had Palle, Trehan, Bedi, and several others. But unfortunately, Gyani Gyan Singh's mistake has filtered down to even Pangu's Panth Prakash, because Dr. Kalvant Singh, or Professor Kalvant Singh, who translated it into English for the first time in the early 2000s, takes Gyani Gyan Singh's logic and vaguely paraphrases it in his translation of Pangu. So the impression one gets is that Binod Singh's children were leading this Jatha, when that's not true.
No, it's not true. This is such a weird interpretation of where things came about because it is Jeevan Singh, as Gupta would get at, leading this. It is the Palle of the belief of Palle under Guru Amar Das and the Trehan from coming Guru Angad Sahib's lineage, but it's difficult to say as to why exactly this had come up. It is a misnomer, and I'm not sure what Gyani Gyan Singh was really trying to get at. With even this different name, I hadn't heard of the second name even at all being shown anywhere else where he had presented otherwise from Bangus Ansi. Yet, um, it is Jeevan Singh's, and returning back to Nawab Kapoor Singh, it's difficult because one of his early childhood um, benefactors, or would have had him really interested in going into Sikhi, would be hearing stories of Banda Singh Bahadur and his Shahidi. He must have been, if I remember, just very into his early teenage years, I believe, or it could have even been 10, I believe, at that point. But it would be difficult for him to just growing up and hearing these stories, which fueled on his future in Sikhi, to sort of go back into it and have these the descendants of Akali Baba Banod Singh as a part of this. It's difficult. I don't get why that would occur.
Yep. And then when we move on from that particular Jatha, we then have Jatha Dasunda Dera, which is led by Dasunda Singh, who would later be the founder and first chief of Nishana Wali Misl, and he was also the father of Maharani Sadakor, who was the mother-in-law of Ranjit Singh.
Yeah, Dashonda Singh, a Gil Jat, as far as I remember, would go on to have this Nishan Valley missile. It's interesting, the Nishan Valley missile as well, because they, after the Shahida missile, has been noted in Itias, in history, to have the second highest, or a semi closer concentration of Nihangs in that Jata, whereas the rest, completely missiles afterwards, would be strictly of Sardars.
Yeah, basically, I mean, so what we're getting at here is that where the rest of the missiles would be more of officer corps, the troops and the non-commissioned type of soldiers would really be in Nishana Valley missile after the Shiites. That's just to put it in modern terminology.
Right.
The last Jatha, now this is the one which has become pretty controversial, especially given that this Jatha has always elicited much controversy, is Jatha Rangreta. Now, this is led by Baba Beer Singh Rangreta, who is also believed to be the descendant of Bhai Jeta or Bhai Jeevan Singh Rangreta, who brought Guru Tegh Bahadur's head back from Delhi and who actually wrote a very concise description of the Khande Ki Pahal ceremony, which is found in his Shri Gurkatha. Now, Beer Singh Rangreta is of a low caste origin. His Jatha is full of lower castes. The reason here is that, obviously Sikhi does not believe in caste. Nawab Kapoor Singh did not believe in it. But when you have a people like the inferior castes who have been religious slaves for over a millennia, you can't really expect them to know what freedom is if you liberate them overnight. You need to prepare them accordingly. And more or less, these people had the mentality of being the stormtroopers of the higher castes against Sikhs. So Jatha Rangreta was not only tasked with seeing to their freedom, but also preparing them for that freedom eventually.
Yeah, it's this Jatha Ringreta that I myself I'm really intrigued by what they present in terms of the scope of furthering the Sikh plight in the 1700s. It as far as I know, that's what they have been tasked for, and that's what they had seen supervision to. But there's a weird fallout afterwards, which I myself can't really explain. It's difficult to sort of grasp where they get lost in time in translation there.
See, because the thing is, in my memory, since the past 10 years, even the previous year at Anandpur Sahib, Hola Malla, the Rangreta Dal of Nihangs today always brings up one issue, that why is it that the Jats in the other Dals always discriminate against them on caste-based basis? And we have videos from the past where they have violent disputes have broken out among Nihangs of Rangreta Dal and others. And I believe in 2018 or earlier, they submitted a memorandum to the Akal Takht requesting that, fellow Nihangs not beat Rangreta Dal Nihangs. And there seems to be some history down here where the Rangreta Dal Nihangs have sealed themselves off from the other Dals. They only cater to the lower castes, but at the same time, they also accuse the other Dals of actually administrating Amrit based on caste. So, Rangretas are not given Amrit in the same butter. And I've actually read about this practice in many old granths and autobiographies and biographies of, so-called leading Panthik figures. And regarding what you say about them being lost in translation, that is a valid observation, because suddenly Bir Singh Rangreta seems to have been written out of Sikh history. We never find out what happened to him. The prevalent view is that he got slain in Peshawar, but then Niranjan Arfi, yep, he's actually a Rangreta historian who found contemporary sources which mentioned that Bir Singh Rangreta became a thorn in the side of the Misls. He was allowed to exist as a Jatha by Nawab Kapoor Singh. He was never, you know, ordered to structure or form a Misl. He was basically all over the place. He would assist every Misl, but what ultimately ended up happening is that as Nawab Kapoor Singh, after he died, we know that the Misls started fighting among each other. And Bir Singh was against this. And Charat Singh Sukarchakia and Allah Singh of Pulkia had this ambition that one of them or their descendants would rule over the Sikhs one day as Maharajas, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And according to Niranjan Arfi, Bir Singh Rangreta got wind of these plans and he became their staunch foe. So obviously, it seems there must have been some sort of incidents inside the Darbar Sahib where Sardars and Misaldars would have drawn their swords against their counterparts. Ultimately, they lured Bir Singh to Amritsar on the pretext that, look, we will apologize and we will get together and try resolving this situation which is afflicting us. So basically, what they did was they lured him into the Darbar Sahib. He deposited his main weaponry with the guards outside, the Akalis outside at least. They seem to have joined in betraying him. Ultimately, he was ambushed by the Akal Takht and killed there, and his voice was silenced from history forever.
Man, that's tough. But as somewhat expected of just basing on how much narratives have turned, I know about the caste-based discrimination that occurs, and I mean the Rangret Radal that is now there are they're absolutely correct, and there's no reason as to why their voices shouldn't be heard. I've heard it myself personally, not from old grunts or anything, but just looking at forums from whatever exists online about this Nihang Dal doing this here, blank here, insert blank here. So that's a tough one to come by.
Yep, and I suppose this Beer Singh Rangret, story would make sense because Naranjan Arfi, he needs to be relooked at. That Ityas needs to be restudied and analyzed. His sources need to be looked at. But he was quite a proficient historian. And on the other hand, the current attitude of the Rangret Adal, like they're sealed off from the Panth, it does go to explain that maybe that history does have some sort of a truth to it. That they're very isolated today. It's almost like they've exiled themselves from the Panth while also, praying for its upkeep, but they've exiled themselves away from other dals.
That does seem to be the case because you don't really hear about them, and it's difficult to say why, but at least now this somewhat paints a picture of what's really occurring. Um, they seem to be true to their cause, and it should be something that's worth applauding. But it's difficult to really judge the whole circumstances. I mean, the whole Maharaja deal of either the Fulkiya or the Sukotraki, as you shared with each Misl at the time, looking to eventually rule. Um, and then of course the Rangretran being aligned pro Gurmat, it's a hard one to swallow.
It is a hard one to swallow, but it also seems the most possible. But then moving on now, 5 jathas of the Tarnadal, and then suddenly what happens is Nawab Kapoor Singh, after a near decade, I believe, counts again, and now there are 65 jathas of the Tarnadal.
Yeah, the number absolutely explodes by March of 1748. Out of nowhere, it's multiplied from what was initially, I believe, 24 to just 65. And it's insane, just the count alone of just what's occurring. And this is quite alarming, as it should be alarming to any sort of administrator that, wow, okay, we have a huge mass of bodies of troops here, of soldiers, coalescing with different dals. And it's great, but something obviously needs to be done. And with the Akalis themselves being gatekeepers of the knowledge in terms of allowing into Sikhi, then there needs to be some sort of reformation from the top down. And by that point, it's still the Buddha Dal, which is stationed in Amritsar. They go on to make this huge, pass this large Gurmata, and this law would be passed in that out of them, 11 would be selected to become premier Misls.
Right. And one thing down here which needs to be noted is what even contemporary European accounts observe is that every Sikh at the time who was fighting wore the dark blue, electric blue apparel, which is today solely stereotyped with the Nihangs, because really that apparel came in pretty convenient for them when they had to camouflage themselves against the Punjabi, wilderness. So everyone wore the same apparel, everyone had the same uniform. But now what's happened is that 65 jathas, and I suppose Nawab Kapoor Singh would have also had this in his mind, that it would be pretty easy to get betrayed by Banda Singh by any of these 65, because loyalties can easily change in such a disjointed system.
Yeah, especially with 65, and there's little to no homogeny even pervading from the Akal Takht. I mean, by that point, Jathas had been moving in just nominally acknowledging Akal Takht as superiority, but not actually receiving any sort of command. So this is something that obviously he needs to address. 65 is absolutely huge, and like that vacuum of power, or even concern of even just one or two dals teaming up, or even looking to consolidate something in Amritsar, it was possible. So just as Nawab Kapoor Singh had done what he needed to do.
Right. And now when these jathas are changed, and this is where Said Navazi Shali, the Urdu historian who Gupta relies on, comes in as being important. Gyani Gyan Singh again seems to have made a mistake here. He mentions that the Baba Deep Singh was the head of Jatha Shahid. So he's confusing the younger with the older. same mistake filters down to Kulwant Singh's translation in the Shri Guru Panth Prakash, I believe. I might be wrong on that. But Nawazish Ali claims that Karam Singh Shahid was the grandson of Baba Deep Singh, but as we know, Baba Deep Singh had a nephew, but he never had any family of his own. So it's more than likely that Karam Singh was an adopted grandson of Baba Deep Singh, and what that explains is why eventually Jatha Shahid becomes Misl Shahid, with Karam Singh becoming a Misldar under Baba Deep Singh, who is made the Sardar of Misl Shahid.
Yeah, this is the pervading notion I've heard as well, is that Baba Deep Singh having no blood and the nephewship, then Karam Singh becoming adopted, which was quite actually routine in practice, and it wasn't something that was I wouldn't say frowned upon, but it wasn't something that was overlooked. That did in fact exist with many, especially in the Misl families when it came to handing down lineage. Even hint, look at Mata Sundarkor with her own adopted son. So yeah, this is what ended up happening, and it's that this Karam Singh would become Misldar, and it seemed that though the Akali notation by that point, with him receiving the Misldari, seemed to have at least to have begun withering away. He would relocate from Batinda and Talmandi Sabbo to, out of nowhere, Shahzadpur.
Yes, he went to Shahzadpur. Now, there's also a story down here as well, which is quite interesting. And it's again based on Gupta because Gupta did the most research on the Misl so far. And unfortunately, we don't have any other historian who's pursued, the Persian history of the Misls because Persian was the official language at the time, or they have not found any news sources on the Misls. See, we are discussing Misl Shahid, and obviously, Karam Singh makes Shahzadpur his official headquarters. But even before that, if you look at Baba Deep Singh, he's training the Akalis at the time. But at the same time, he's also, dabbling into politics, and he's a very successful politician because Batenda, after he destroys the Patti strongholds in those deserts, basically he's the sole power in Batenda. And from Damdama Sahib, his Akali and Nihang warriors sail out and they defeat any enemy which they come across. And a contemporary observer at the time, whose name is Harcharan Das, he mentions that the chief of the area at the time was one Darnath Shah. And Darnath Shah seems to be a regal title given by the Jats of Bathinda to their ruler. And because there is no other ruler mentioned at the time, then it's safe to assume that Darnath Shah and Baba Deep Singh were the one and the same.
That would be the case because we're looking at that ripe era, right, where there's just no other contender. So with him having stationed at Batinda, also once again, nice move by Nawab Kapoor Singh to have that sort of area coalescing into Sikhi. He had consolidated that, and the Akali Nangs and whatnot soldiery were holding down the fort down in the Malwa.
Basically, and again, the Akalis and the Nihangs were different. So some Akalis were commanding the Nihangs, but most of them were involved in Prachar and bringing others into Sikhi. But at the same time, Baba Deep Singh also had regal duties. He probably had regal paraphernalia as well. He was seen as being a king. That's how most sources at the time referred to him, as almost the king of Bathinda. But given his age at the time, he was passing the responsibility more and more onto his nephew and the Misldars. Ultimately, Baba Deep Singh is Sardar of Misl Shahid, goes on a rescue mission to rescue Sikhs from the Afghans in Amritsar and also rid the city of the infestation. Ultimately, he dies fighting at the Battle of Golwar. Again, this is not to say whether he fought with his head on his palm or not, but irrespective of this, event, you need to imagine the sort of love he had for Sikhi that suddenly at such an old age he decides, okay, you know what, I'm going to go down there, rescue Sikh children, and also rid Amritsar of this infestation. And it's amazing that this old veteran leads this, military, his Shahid army down there. But after him, there's a massive vacuum within Misl Shahid itself. This is one of the first Misls which actually starts fracturing among itself. So he's succeeded by his nephew Shodha Singh, but Shodha Singh dies during the Vadda Kalukara, and this is when Karam Singh Shahid comes into his own when he's elected Sardar by the Misldars of Misl Shahid. But this three-way split is quite big. So he sees that there are opportunists who are actually becoming Akalis. So he decides that the elder Akalis would be based at Damdama Sahib. This is, group number one. They will train future Akalis, and the younger Akalis he sends to Darbar Sahib. And he sends a whole group of Nihangs, which, as we discussed, were soldiers with them, to patrol around Amritsar and guard the city. And himself, he takes to Shehzadpur. So suddenly, after Baba Deep Singh, Misl Shahid is divided into three forms: the Akali Pracharaks, the younger Akalis, and the political faction at Amritsar, at Shehzadpur.
Yeah, that's precisely it. It would be Karam Singh who would take over, obviously, after November of 1757. I recall him. I believe he was under a Sandhu lineage, and yeah, this is the split that would come about. And it's really interesting to note that it is true that the Shahid Dhamasa would be the first to begin to fracture, because it's right by 1760 that all of the Buddha Dal Misildars, which were originally stationed at Amritsar, would leave, showing the first fracture of just the Buddha Dal force alone. And eventually they would go on to succumb and cease to exist entirely. But with the Buddha Dal Misildars leaving Majha, in comes in Karam Singh, which himself, obviously, Shahid Dal would be the only Buddha Dal Misl not stationed in Majha, but of course having Akalis routinely stationing and of course upkeeping and custodianship. But he would have a smaller Jatha go there under Kali Baba Gurbaksh Singh stationed there. And then, of course, the political faction would go to Shahzadpur. This would be the first time that the any Misl would sort of experience such sort of fracturing, because it would be from 1760 forward that a lot of these Misls actually began experiencing their heyday. The Nakai, the Pangi, the Levalia, all of them would be experiencing such growth. But it is, in fact, firstly the Shahidna who start to combust internally at this moment.
And it's intriguing to notice that when Nawab Kapoor Singh makes these 11 missiles, he never includes the Polkias. They're altogether different. And it's pretty hard to say whether they actually ever consisted a missile or whether it was a, embryonic monarchy going on down there. But these 11 missiles divide themselves again, and Buddha Dal at the time is not, solely formed of Akalis as is claimed today. Buddha Dal at the time has the Singapuria missile, Aluwalia missile, Misl Shahid, Nishana Wali missile, Karora Singhia missile, and the Dalewalia missile. So the six policy makers of the Panth are part of the Buddha Dal. And it makes sense that Misl Shahid is the gatekeeper, because the Akalis were gatekeepers as the missile of Akalis. The foremost missile charged with Prachar and increasing the Panth is a part of the Buddha Dal, because basically, you need to control Gurdwaras, you need to control Rehet, you need to uphold, Rehet Maryada, you need to follow Gurbani. Obviously, it makes sense that they would have more of a pulse on what the people believe and think than the other missiles, because they would come in close contact with them regarding religious matters.
On a daily basis, the Akalis of then the Shahida Misl incorporated into the Buddha military organization, they are interacting with the Aam Sangat around Punjab. The other missiles that you had listed are sheerly Sardar missiles, and yet they are actively beating diplomatic and administrative means as well, via the Buddha conglomeration. So this is something that people need to keep in mind. It does get misconstrued a lot. But it would be the Shahida missile completely as a benefit to have them such associated in the Shanwali side as well, to keep up Sikhi at the common level, and for the Lok, the Sangat, the common folk, to look at as guiders.
Yep, and so the epithet, the title of Misl Shahid Tarna Dal never existed. It's historically wrong. It was usually Misl Shahid Buddha Dal.
Yes, definitely, without a doubt.
Yep, and so the Tarna Dal now, that still remains as the Panth's military. They do not have any policy-making prerogatives other than in their own domains. And the Misls which form the Tarna Dal are the Pangi Misl, Sukarchakya Misl, Ramgarhya Misl, and the Nakai Misl and the Kanaya Misl. Now, interestingly enough, it seems that the second Jathedar of Tarna Dal actually, after Nawab Kapoor Singh, is Hari Singh Pangi.
Yes, it is in fact Hari Singh Pangi. And side note, just to keep in mind, you can just look at where all these missiles were expanding. And the Tarna Dal were out of Majha, and they were out and about and controlling, keeping the Sangat safe. They're the youth, they're on the move, you know. They are equipped with horses, so they're very quick movement against Afghan and Mughal forces. They can't be tracked. So it is Sardar Hari Singh Pangi who would take over the leadership of the Tarna Dal military org afterwards from Nawab Kapoor Singh, who himself was controlling administrative affairs from the Akal Takht.
So basically, Nawab Kapoor Singh was the president, but Hari Singh Pangi, we can say, was the highest five-star commander among the Panth at the time.
Arguably so, up until the subjugation of Justice Singh Ahluwalia, yeah.
Yep. And so what happens now is that obviously, the Misls start fighting among themselves, much like the Delian League, which formed to fight off the Persians, but the states could not keep together, and ultimately Philip of Macedon subdued a majority, and then Alexander came to the front, and the world is as we know it today.
Right.
But after these Misls start fighting among themselves, obviously what happens is around the 1790s, I believe, roughly, I might be wrong, Karam Singh suddenly dies. This is one of the last stable Sardars in the Punjab. He's far-sighted, he's a visionary, but in his old age he retreats to Damdama Sahib, he dies, and he's succeeded by his sons Gulab Singh and Mehtab Singh, who are basically toothless tigers. They don't know what they're doing. And the Shehzadpur territory and otherwise is made over to Ranjit Singh. He subsumes it. And this is quite a big misbelief, you can say, or an erroneous belief which people lead to believe that Ranjit Singh had respect for this, Shahid Misl. He never did. He subsumed their territory, which Gulab Singh gave to him without firing a single shot in defense. And the rest of the territory they had over the Satluj, where they had considerable influence, they gave it to the British. So basically, that was the end of Misl Shahid.
A very quick and unfortunate destruction, yeah, under Gulab Singh's part, who would come over in, I believe, 1784. And he would remain, although Gulab Singh would remain alive well until the 1840s. He died in 1844, but the Misl itself, him succeeding the family estate, but the Misl itself having become extinct in 1809 after those Satluj states there would accept British protection, right?
Right, so that's the end of Misl Shahid. However, Karam Singh had foreseen something and his legacy would live on, but even though it would be a legacy which would soon be derailed, the problem suddenly becomes that the Akalis at Damdama Sahib decide after Karam Singh that, you know what, we don't like Gulab Singh, he doesn't listen to us, stuff him, we're moving to Amritsar. So they leave Bathinda as well. And the fireworks are just about to go off in Darbar Sahib, because suddenly what you have is there is a further fracture among the Akalis when the Bathinda faction reaches. And more or less, the interesting thing here is that suddenly two factions form among the Akalis. One has control of the Akal Takht. This is the intellectual side, it's politically savvy. It has a swag about it, these are the younger ones and the older ones who are united. And they have sweet speech. That's the only way to put it. So basically, they have all the Misldars in Amritsar under their influence. The ones around Harmandir Sahib itself, these are the more aggressive types. And they're led by an individual Akali from the Nishanawali Misl, whose name is Naina Singh. So what ultimately happens there?
It's really interesting what eventually ends on to occur here. It's that it seems that Akali Naina Singh would have, as you stated, under his control the Harmandir Sahib, and being rambunctious and flamboyant as he is, whereas the intellectual side, I believe it could have been at that point still Akali Baba Gurbaksh Singh, but he himself would go on to be martyred, made Shahid as well in 1762. Um, but it's just constant back and forth between this is what is true, this is not, this Gyani said that, this Granthi needs to go. It's just constant agitation. And while the Misldars are out and about, still having their own affairs in seizing land, the actual central authority, of course, with that being Amritsar, is under siege by this sort of another fracturing.
Yep, and intriguing to notice now is that the aggressive Akalis, at the very least, actually seem to be thinking that they can take over Punjab. They can actually take over Khalsa Raj. And for this reason, even though Naina Singh is part of the Nishana Wali Misl, he raises the specter of Misl Shahid. Now, obviously, after Karam Singh, sent the Akalis away out of the Misl, you can see that most of them suddenly end up in different Misls as Granthis, etc. And they seem to have assembled under the authority of head Granthi Chanchal Singh, who Jassa Singh installed as the head Granthi of Amritsar after kicking out the Udasis. उन्होंने गंद काफी पा लिया सी. And what eventually ends up transpiring is that Chanchal Singh dies, and now suddenly these factions are at each other's throats. So there is a very knife-edged truce which suddenly gets violated by one side or the other. And Naina Singh decides that, well, you know what, my fists can talk better than the Akali's pen, the intellectual Akali's pen. And it's not unheard of that, these factions meet outside in the streets and suddenly bullets are fired, swords are drawn, and, quotes are hurled at each other. And slowly but surely, Naina Singh starts becoming a terror to friend and foe alike.
Yeah, Naina Singh, who would, of course, have his Nishanvali ties. There's some speculation of Shahid Misl ties as well, but that would be negated as by Ishwar Singh, who himself was a Nishanvali. The Sardar in the Misl would have him at his back. He would make his way to Amritsar and sort of have these, of course, these sort of functions going on, and it's really cutthroat and very unorthodox. The sort of route that he takes. It's even interesting how even after the death of head Granthi Chanchal Singh, this would all even come about. How he would just make his way, and this is the split that the Shahid Misl would go on, or at least, sorry, not Shahid, the Akalis themselves would find this path going down. It's not something one would expect, especially where, as you mentioned, fist versus pen.
Pretty much. And another thing about Naina Singh is that he hates the Misldars. He hates them with a pathological venom because basically they do not listen to him. And he remembers Baba Deep Singh's glory days, but the thing is, he is no Baba Deep Singh at all. I mean, Baba Deep Singh had a control in his temper. This man is, pretty aggressive all the time. He's a real Nihang. He's a real crocodile, because Nihang means crocodile in Persian. Anyway, he's taking a bite out of everyone, and ultimately what happens is that the fracture becomes so big that different traditions are being invoked and different lineages are being invoked. Ultimately, Naina Singh decides on a new course of action. He suddenly decides that the Akalis are the Jalda Vahir, the moving encampment, and they are one of the Takhts of Sikhi. And the Misldars are having none of it, but because he's becoming powerful, they decide to play along with him for the time being. So Naina Singh actually, the original Akali Dastar, it's believed, was given to signal their, status as gatekeepers. And it would have a slight farla, a piece of cloth fluttering at the top. Not too much, but enough to consist a distraction to the enemy in the field of battle because of the Sant Sipahi, warrior mystic ethos. And at the same time signal their, status as ensigns of the Panth, as gatekeepers of the Panth. Naina Singh decides to make quite a considerably longer turban, a bunga, and he orders that anyone who comes to approach him when he's wearing the star bunga they have to come in, rough cloths of sak. And very soon he starts attacking the various villages under the Misl. So really innocent people are caught up in this crossfire. And the Akal Takht intellectual Akalis and the Misldars get together one day, And next thing you know, Nana Singh is thrashed out of Amritsar and forced into Muktsar.
Yeah, that is the path he would take. Naina Singh is very much credited with the introduction of the, you could say, the pyramidal common turban that exists today. I just read that in by Khan Singh Nabba's Mahankosh, that there's of course a story that exists with where Guru Gobind Singh would eventually get rid of his blue bana himself while proceeding around through the the Malwa, and Nihang Pai Man Singh would take it and just put it on top of his the star there, and that's this Nihang lineage would come up. But it would be most biggest attribution coming to Akali Naina Singh with this larger turban style. And yeah, he would just eventually just boom, quickly out of nowhere, he's gone from Sachkhand city Amritsar to just city Muktsar Sahib.
And now suddenly comes a chance for him to redeem himself. He's in Muktsar, he's being a terror to everyone around him. Basically, what the Misldars and Sardars, remaining Sardars, realizes that he's out of their way. Good, just let him alienate himself further from the Sikh masses. The more he alienates himself, the much better it is for us to finally crush him. However, that's a dream which doesn't come true because suddenly Shah Zaman, if I understand correctly, invades from Afghanistan.
Yeah, this would be, I believe, Shah Zaman, who would be coming over from Afghanistan for continuing what would be his Durrani forefathers' legacy, of course, getting into Punjab and obviously making their way to India. And this would open up the field for Akali Naina Singh to actually try something here, right?
Yep, obviously. And now the thing is that older Sardars like Jassa Singh Ram Guria can't be bothered, taking on Shah Zaman. And many decide that, what, just let the guy get through as long as he pays us some sort of a tax. But, there's a young Sukar Chakia Sardar, blind in one eye, and his mother in law Sada Kaur. And the son in law Ranjit Singh aggressively argues that no, we need to defeat this guy, we need to show him up. Now, of course, Ranjit Singh knows no one else is going to help him, but at the very least, if he actually succeeds in chasing Shah Zaman away, at least he will, have the masses support for what he wants to do, which is eventually realize his grandfather's dream of subsuming the Punjab under one authority of a singular Sukar Chakia Maharaja. And as Ranjit Singh is confronting Zaman on the periphery, the few Afghan stragglers are finished off by Nana Singh, who does this to sort of claim some redemption for himself in the public eye.
Right. This would be one of the few final attempted Sarbat Khalsas called by then Maharaja Jeet Singh, or eventually coming on too. And of course, the most of the Sardars were just not having it, we're not hearing it. So as of course the young Sukrachak is doing his best to hold it down, a very much old and aged Naina Singh comes from the rear guard and does what he can to I, well, I don't know what was going on. He's trying to assume some sort of glory, but in front of who? He had alienated himself already in the hierarchy. Commoners must have been aware, at least earlier in Amritsar and then now City Muktsar Sahib, that there's something up with this man. So to whose avail and to whose appeal, it's interesting. It's not too difficult to say, but of course he's trying to get glory for what the Sangat is, whatever they would be paying attention to. But it's quite interesting to see the take that he would get or what he thinks he could come about with by ensuing such.
Unfortunately, though, he's up against a man who's got brains and brawn, and Ranjit Singh decides to run circles around him. So obviously, somehow or the other, it seems that some sort of a rapprochement is affected among all the Akalis, and Nana Singh is made the sole commander in Ranjit Singh's eyes as far as he's concerned. He sort of, unofficially declares him as the de facto head of all Akalis as far as he's concerned. Now, suddenly, it seems there is a massive purge of Akalis. Nana Singh versus the Akalis who oppose him, Akalis who oppose Nana Singh versus him, and Ranjit Singh subtly picks, favorites. So what you have now is that the Akalis as a gatekeeping institute are done. It's their final days. Udasis and Nirmala suddenly start, supplanting them. And the few Akalis who are left are under the command of Gurbaksh Singh, who is a Ranjit Singh creature. The rest are either subsumed with the Naina Singh, or they go to their homes and become granthis, or they become regimental granthis in the Lahore forces, or they're basically finished off in these violent infighting bouts which happen throughout Punjab. And then, just as suddenly, Naina Singh dies.
Yep, he is just out of the picture there. And this is a really like abrupt and insane decline that one would not expect of this, the Akali scion, which exists in the Sangat. But yeah, you're correct. Many of the understanding ones would go on to seek roles within the Lahore Darbar, of course, still being Dharmic, still being Panthik. And then Naina's force would dwindle. Interestingly, much faster than I guess people go on to claim of the Bandai Khalsa, Banda Singh Bahadur and whatnot. Um, and yeah, it's just out of the picture there. And it seems as though that these Akalis that had accepted the Lahore Darbar, um, there's a connotation that even, of course, colonial European writers, Cunningham and whatnot, share, is that they have no moral bounds to, or sorry, earthly bounds to what sort of responsibilities exist here, planetary, and maybe that's an ensign of what had happened here with, of course, Naina being gone and shifting towards the Lahore Darbar, seeking monetary gain or not, regardless, just being content with the situation at hand and understanding what a young Ranjit Singh is coming up with.
Basically, and just as suddenly, though, there is this another massive fracture again. They just keep on fighting among themselves. That they just can't stop fighting among themselves at this stage. Now, suddenly a new faction arises among the Akalis. So these Akalis who support this faction, who consist this faction, are saying, well, okay, wait a minute, we had these glory days, we want those glory days back again. Now we're just granthis or gatekeepers. We have been supplanted by these other, priestly classes. What's the point to our existence? And just as suddenly someone else comes along who decides, well, you know what? Here's a good opportunity for me to somehow cement my own grasp on the Sikhs. And this is a very charismatic individual who's an Akali, and his name goes down in history as Akali Phula Singh.
Right. So as Naina would be lost in time, it would be around 1800, exactly in that year that Akali Phula Singh, young student of course, what has been shared as Akali Naina Singh, he would come about onto the scene. Him and his Jatha in particular would make their move onto Amritsar, and they would just station there with little to no resistance for whatever would have been the follow of previous prior to Akalis. Akali Baba Phula Singh is there, and what would be shared now is eventually that he would assume the Jathedari of the Akal Takht.
So basically, the thing is, Phula Singh is a new breed of Akali. He's a new generation of Akalis. The Akalis of Guru Gobind Singh Ji's days are dead. Akalis of Baba Deep Singh's days are dead. With Naina Singh, the last, link in the chain is cut off from the past and the present as far as Phula Singh is concerned. But then again, the gatekeepers, as far as Ranjit Singh is concerned, are led by Gurbakh Singh, who's based at Akal Takht. And while Akali Phula Singh claims all these Jathedaris, people just shrug their shoulders and move on, ignoring him. So ultimately, he decides to resurrect the name of Misl Shahid. Again, this has no effect whatsoever. So he sits back down, draws up a plan, and then he decides that the 3,000 to 4,000 Nihangs left over from Gulab Singh's days who still follow him, he decides to take them to Ranjit Singh, makes an offer which Ranjit Singh doesn't refuse, and next thing you know, he's made Jathedar of the Akal regiment in the Lahore forces.
Right. This would be in January of 1802, roughly, which would still just cool. No, I always love adding is that 1803 would be roughly the last Akali, as far as I'm concerned, would pass away. It would be Sant Baba Rocha Singh, who was far out by Peshawar and Abbottabad. Of course, he's not really in a position to pay attention at age as he is 115 years old. He would pass away, and that would be roughly the last time of the Akalis from Guruji's era living. January 1802, and it's Maharaja Ranjit Singh seeking to oust the Pangis from now Amritsar, where he has previously in the 1790s taken Lahore, and Akali Baba Phula Singh would be there, and he would make his mediation to avert bloodshed, surprisingly. And from this gain, obviously the Pangis, as whoever the lineage and whoever the descendants controlling Amritsar would have seen that their prior to would have left Lahore, they accept this mediation and led by Akali Baba Phula Singh. And in return, Maharaj Ranjit Singh gives him charge of the holy shrines in Amritsar and leaving charges from the Sardars and the Sikh court for maintenance. And he would be given the Akal Takht. And that's where the beginning would be there. It would be in January of 1802.
But he is a pretty tempestuous personality. He's more in control of himself than Naina Singh, but now and then his bouts of anger, obviously become pretty legendary. There is a British account which states that one day the Akalis at Akal Takht refused to pay him what he demanded from them, and suddenly he gets up on an elephant and marches to Amritsar to wreak havoc on them, except Ranjit Singh intercedes at the last minute and stops him. So until the Europeanization of the Khalsa forces, Akali Phula Singh actually seems to be quite an ardent Ranjit Singh supporter, even though now and then they have their clashes. But suddenly, when the Gore are brought into the Khalsa army, see, now the thing is, it's one thing to arm yourself with guns, right? The white man has a gun, I have a gun. It's a altogether different matter to actually get a white man to come and teach you drills with the guns and how they march and how to fight with the gun to make you more effective. Now, Phula Singh prefers the technology, but he does not prefer the tactics. And suddenly he's at odds with Ranjit Singh, and the clashes start happening even more frequently.
Yep, it's when the Europeanization of the Sikh Imperial Army would begin, is that these sort of course, obstacles would come in between the relationship. Still, regardless, Akali Baba Phula Singh is appreciative of what Maharaj Ranjit Singh has established in Punjab, of course. But there's like one note where it would be in 1809, where himself, Charles Metcalfe, East India Company representative, would make his way via a Muslim escort into Punjab to visit Ranjit Singh in Amritsar, or it could have been Kasur. And the Akali Baba Phula Singh's Nihangs, they attack, and they attack that British envoy. And so this is the you can see this from the understanding. Of course, it goes on into the 1810s, that white man has gun, I have gun, but white man does not know gun, I know gun, right? So this is something that, of course, Akali Baba Phula Singh didn't want to accept. I've heard stories few times that Akali Baba Phula Singh really pressed Maharaj Ranjit Singh to look at the 52 commandments, the 52 hukums of what is purported to be of Guru Gobind Singh's, or could be potentially of a an Anki Singh of that era. And yeah, this is the sort of strenuous relationship that would come on, and it would only persist much more after.
Now, interestingly enough, by this time the names Buddha Dal and Tarna Dal are long dead. They don't exist at all. Even the concepts are forgotten, unless they're mentioned in historic texts of the era. So no one basically even remembers that these belts used to exist.
Right, right. I'm sorry, you may have cut out a bit there. I may be experiencing something at my end, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, it just doesn't exist anymore. If anywhere, it's nomenclature. There's the belief that it may have just become a just really minor synonymous term with just Akali, or because the infrastructure which had blown out by 1760 of the Buddha military organization, it's gone. So it at minimum, at the most small scale, it could have just been a synonymous term with just Akali or Nihang, or just a force of what I believe Cunningham shares as the Akali fanatics or a crack brigade of Maharaj Ranjit Singh. But yeah, there's no evidence of such.
And interesting, I have never read in the past decade any account mentioning Buddha Dal and Akali Phula Singh or Tarna Dal and Akali Phula Singh in the same sentence.
No, I personally have not either. It's something that I do end up asking once in a while if there's any sort of resource available, sharing such. But no, I even to the point where it had Akali Baba Phul Singh been aware that he himself was also jetted out of Buddha Dala, it just doesn't seem such.
And here's the interesting thing about Akali Pula Singh is that at the same time, there doesn't seem to be any concern about religious affairs. There is a crossover with Akalis from, Hazur Sahib coming and going, but they're bringing their own, traditions which do not agree with Sikhi. And there is this intermixture until ultimately no one knows what's going on. And the Akal regiment is just seen as another army, but altogether an esoteric army. But they're pretty much branded about as Ranjit Singh's cannon fodder, really.
Yeah, that's what would, I believe, end up happening with what British sources would share at Peshawar, I believe, would be the final attack there, or Nowshera. And yeah, it's just belittlement slowly by slowly to just becoming what would be an Akali regiment in a grander Lahore Darbar army. And this is the eventual stance that would come about, not just from understanding, but just from what we see happening. And Kali Baba Phula Singh by this point would be the really late 1810s, and it's just on. I'm not sure myself about actually what's going through his head.
Because there are some interesting observations. Gulcharan Singh, who wrote Ranjit Singh and his generals, tracked down some primary sources, and they mentioned that contrary to the modern Nihang perception, Pula Singh he was fanatical in terms of, letting non-Sikhs into Punjab. Otherwise, he seems to have been very relaxed, even in his Maryada as far as the Bana was concerned. He actually quotes a source which says that Pula Singh distinguished himself by wearing a magnificent white custom fitted to the body with a broad double-sided gold-laced bordek hanging round his neck and interwoven with light silk scarf crossed in front of his chest.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
yep, no conspicuous dastar bunga, no farlewala dumala, and even Gulshan Lal Chopra in Punjab as a sovereign state, actually, this is what he thinks, is that unlike other members of his sect, Pula Singh has the air of a true courtier instead of a religious fanatic. So some things could set him off, but most of the time he was a very chill Akali. And
Hmm.
it's Gulcharan Singh who finally summarizes that, Pula Singh wore a white turban with the blue Nihang insignia overhung with a variegated heron's plume. So other than, war, Akali Pula Singh never wore his bana.
Hmm. Very interesting.
And all this seems to have been carefully designed by him to acquire power from Ranjit Singh, because William Moorcraft, who actually passed through Punjab, writes that I also had a message from Pula Singh, the Akali, expressing his dissatisfaction with Ranjit Singh, his determination to attach himself to the English, and his readiness to carry fire and sword wherever I bid him. I declined the interview which he solicited.
Wow. Did he actually? Huh?
It seems that Pula Singh started casting himself as a new era Nawab Kapoor Singh because the clothing matches with what Kapoor Singh supposedly wore. And it's almost as if he decides that he wants to supplant Ranjit Singh, but ultimately the problem here is that he also realizes that he is relevant only due to Ranjit Singh.
That's absolutely true as well. That's actually more than true. It's that his only stature itself holds with the Lahore Darbar existing. And just the acknowledgement from Maharaja Ranjit Singh, which keeps him in place. Maharaja Ranjit Singh was, I do like to say he knows how to play his cards right, but he did understand, he did have a great respect of, had he not implemented it, he did have a good respect of Sikhi. I was sharing this the other day, that in even nominally just accepting what Akali Fula Singh has to say, it sat well with him because, as you shared, it's been noted that Akali Fula Singh was more of a chill man, and um, and that's something that Ranjit Singh both liked but also encouraged, and that encouragement just kept going with just a simple acknowledgement by Maharaja Ranjit Singh of just having him around in Amritsar, right?
Yep, that's right. And ultimately, after Akali Pula Singh's martyrdom, The Akalis, the Akal regiment, everything is forgotten. Basically, the Akal regiment fractures further until it ceases to exist. And most of the Akalis go to Darbar Sahib, and others become Granthis in various regiments, and others go back to their villages. Everything is forgotten once again, and Buddha Dal and Tarna Dal, basically, they have ceased to exist. Although it seems Pula Singh made constant references to Misl Shahid, but by this point in time, Misl Shahid, Buddha Dal, and Tarna Dal are long dead. There is no lineage, everything is effectively ended. It's the end of the line for them.
It is, yep, end of the line. It would be March 14th, 1823. That would be the Battle of Nowshera, I recall right here. Akali Baba Fula Singh would be Shahid. And it's interesting because the next is out semi out of nowhere as Akali Baba Hanuman Singh. That's the story for a little bit later. But in between that span of Akali Baba Fula Singh Shahidi up until the first Anglo-Sikh War, it's just more diffusion. It's just slowly just the scene just unraveling. Akalis once again becoming more regimental Granthis, taking up roles in other areas in Punjab where they could, keeping preaching tours, and just working with the Lahore Darbar in general.
Basically, Kapoor Singh intended them to be like the Nomo Tetai, which were present in Athens in the late 5th and 4th centuries, large groups of lawmakers or observers who upheld the common law. But obviously, after Karam Singh Shahid, they failed in that. So it's not really such a glorious history, is it, when you look at it, that everyone started fighting among themselves and failed in the missions they had. Ultimately, the British invade Punjab. There are massive battles. Akali Hanuman Singh comes along. The Battle of Sabroa. After that, he's betrayed by the Pulkias. But interesting to notice that even though the modern Buddha Dal call him a Jatedar, Hanuman Singh never acknowledged himself as such. He just called himself an Akali, serving at Darbar Sahib. He was joined by Akali Bodh Singh. But after they die, the remaining Buddha Dal goes to Hazur Sahib. Now, there's a very interesting story here. I don't know if you've heard it or not. Hazur Sahib is under the administration of a Mahant named Allah Singh Akali. And
A Mahant with Akali. Interesting.
yep, and it seems the Udasi influence down there had actually altered many things, at the time. And Allah Singh knew that the British were very prominent in Hazur Sahib and Nanded. So rather than upset them, he went into the jungles. He found the Buddha Dal not the Buddha Dal Jathedar, I'm sorry, I'm just misquoting here. He found the Kali Jathedar, and the Jathedar told him that he's going to resurrect Buddha Dal, Tarna Dal, Misl Shahid, all these dreams he had to go back and kick the British out. And Allah Singh suddenly takes out his dagger and stabs him in the gut.
I'm on. Be completely honest with you, can't say I've heard that. No.
Yep, it's mentioned in the Master's Presence by Nadar Singh and Paramjit, even though they do hold the other story that the modern Buddha Dal has a lineage which is attached to, Nawab Kapoor Singh. Anyhow, Allah Singh is killed in the ensuing fracas. Ultimately, when these remaining Punjabi Akalis and Nihangs rush to Hazur Sahib to massacre the Sikhs there, Allah Singh's wife holds up their baby Hazura Singh, and ultimately they drop their weapons, the belligerents, and just go back into the forests of Nanded. They melt away in these forests, they remain there for 3 decades, and ultimately, under a certain Gyana Singh, they come back. But as established, there is no lineage, and then suddenly we have the start of the modern Buddha Dal and Tarna Dal, which claim ancient lineage. But is that a correct lineage or not?
I'm honestly under the sole imperative to say it's really not. Just even pushing back a false narrative of prior to Nawab Kapoor Singh Berk is doing a lot of injustice to what the original Buddha Dal from 1734 to 1760 actually did. I personally see it as quite disrespectful, but no, it doesn't hold up. There's just no sort of claim because even afterwards, when Jathedar Jassa Singh Ahluwalia consolidated the force, a lot of historians, Gupta like and whatnot, see as really the final nail in the coffin for Buddha Dal is the united siege of Sirhind on in January of 1764, right? So that is their exact history there, and it's just this drawing out. It's Me personally, I'm saying it's disrespectful to Gurmat in general.
Basically, they call themselves Buddha-dal and Tarna-dal Nihangs, but these new Akalis now coming into the Punjab and the Nihangs, they do not have that sense of history. They considerably change the ranking system. They start claiming lineages, and then suddenly we have another mystery down here. Now, I took this quote from Gyani Gyan Singh's Naveen Panth Prakash, Volume 5. Not really a considerably well-publicized volume, but there is a part in there where it makes a claim about a text which has been doing the rounds for the past few years, the Sarablo Granth, which is claimed to be solely a Nihang text.
Right. This is a Granth, sometimes Mangalacharan Puran. It does exist, and it's quite odd in both just what it is and just how it comes about, right?
Yep, and I took it to a Granthi Singh who actually once worked as an archivist for the SGPC, so he has a sense of history. He's come across this before, and he actually told me, like, I presented the quote to him and said, look, there are experts on the internet who are saying that this quote actually mentions Sarblo Granth, and he translated it for me. His translation is quite different. It's also pretty intriguing as well. Now, Gyani Gyan Singh, we must remember, was going off on observation. And he's not such a well-read author now, is he?
Not all the time, no, not really.
Right. So not many people know what his works consist of. So we need to be actually looking at those works as well. But this quote in question claims that Ad Guru te Dasam law, that the way it's translated is that the Ad Guru, the Dasam Granth, and the Sarb law are reverential for the Panth. But what's intriguing is the way it's actually translated by the Granthi is that the illumination is from Ad Guru and Dasam. These Granths are reverential for the Panth.
Right. So it's this exact quote that I myself had seen and was being shared, was being put around online on from Naveen Pant Prakash. I too had actually gone to my a local Granthi at my own Gurdwara, and I'd sat down and been quite specific and straightforward to him. I wanted to see what was his take on it. He himself said that he has done Katha at least twice on it, and I had him read that to me, and it's exactly the same. He said it's illumination. It refers to light more. There's no mentioning of this next Granth on its own at all.
And now this extra Granth, since it's been brought out into the public domain, it's argued that it's a secret text. It was only with the Akali Nihangs that's used to somehow justify the lineage which they claim today. But there is an interesting story about this Granth as well. Have you read the Buddha Dal stick on it?
I have. I had accessed an English translation, which it came from their printing press, and I'd taken a look at it. Yeah,
it's intriguing that this text, this Sarblo stick, is actually written by an individual named Harnam Das Udasi, and he's also claimed to be a certain Nihang Nurang Singh. Now, two very different names, but it seems it's the same individual. Now, what's actually very interesting is that according to Harnam Das, like in this stick alone, now the stick, it must be remembered, is actually written, the introduction at least is written by the Buddha Dal. Now, according to the writer of the introduction, who I believe is currently Akali Daya Singh, who was Santa Singh Nihang's scribe, this text first entered the Punjab for all purposes in 1803. Right?
yeah, that's what had been shared by Diyal. Yeah,
And this text is written by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. It has Biras in it. So it seems pretty odd to me that the Khalsa and the Punjab undergo a near century of genocides and holocausts, and no one gives them this text. Even Guru Gobind Singh Ji makes sure that it's kept secret from them. And suddenly, when everything settles down in 1803, you suddenly bring this forward and say, hey, look, this also has Biras.
it just simply doesn't add up. I mean, if it has the BRS, you want the Sangat, you want the Panth to succeed, and if it's something that you see as a means of getting the BRS up in the Panth, why not it be shared in such an era where two Kalukaras had happened, and there's just constant alienation, just constant discrimination from Mughal side, Afghan side, Kabul, Delhi alike. It just doesn't add up.
It's it's pretty interesting because it also comes down to the fact that in 1775, Sukha Singh at Patna Sahib claimed that he actually received it in the forests. Now, apparently, he went out for a walk in the forests and met an Udasi who gave it to him and said, "Hey, bro, look, here's another Gurbani. It's the Sarblo Granth." And if you look at the criteria established in the Buddha Dalstik, now that's pretty interesting, that criteria. So many people questioned that criteria in 2003. The internet is full of it. Now, point one to prove its authenticity is that all the Sampradaya Gyanis, Mahapurushes, and Pracharaks believe Shri Hazur Sahib Nanded to be the place of composition of Shri Sarblo Granth. Okay, look, that's generally accepted. Fine then. But that doesn't prove it's authentic. Then comes number two. A Panthik gathering of great Sant scholars and Gurmukhs was held at Gurdwara Redu Sahib, and it was unanimously agreed that Shri Sarblo Granth is the composition of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Now, here's the thing. Pandit Tara Singh Narottam of the Nirmalas, for all his faults, raised his voice against the Sarblo Granth. He used the same criteria which any modern historian would use to argue that, wait a second, if there are Akalis and Sikhs going to and fro from Hazur Sahib to Punjab, why isn't this Sarblo Granth being brought to them for the Panth's benefit? Why aren't they giving it to the Panth at the time?
Yeah, it's exactly that what this Nirmala Pandit was sharing. It's that if there is constant movement from Punjab to Nanded and right back, how was it not at one point at all just carried over and shared with the Sangat there? What was really holding it back, you know?
Then obviously is the third fact, which is that apparently Gurdwara Langar Sahib was known as Bunga Sarbloji, but Sarblo was quite a prevalent term in the Panth at the time, so we don't know whether the Sarblo Granth is even written at that Bunga. Now, these theories don't stack up, but Harnam Das Udasi, who actually is credited with making that stick, and he's called the most avid researcher on the Sarblo Granth, that's the theory he provides. Now, Gurinder Singh Maan of the USA actually went to Punjab and he saw two manuscripts of the Sarblo Granth at Anandpur Sahib, and both of them bear the date of 1698, if I remember correctly. Yep. Now, one of the manuscripts he saw contains compositions by Gurdas Singh.
Right. Bhai Gurdas Singh was at one point as well, for a period of time, the head Granthi of Harmandir Sahib for a little bit in there, where the scuffle between, of course, Jassa Singh Ahluwalia and other head Granthi Chanchal Singh had happened.
Between the Akalis and Chanchal Singh, yes. And the other point he makes is that one of these Sarblo Granth manuscripts also has the Bachittar Natak in it. Now, his theory, as far as he understands, is that since the 1980s, there has been the circulation of the Sarblo Granth, but it's pretty much restricted. No one has actually studied it. No one has been allowed to study it unless they use the Sampradaya criterion. However, his belief is that it's also possible that these Sarblo Granth manuscripts do not have a general concurrence on the content. Something has more, something has less. It can be that after Anandpur Sahib was destroyed by the enemy, many Sikhs would have lost their houses, their lives, and after the dust settled down, some surviving scholars, distant scholars, would have come along and they would have tried collecting these Sikh manuscripts or Sikh, writings made at Anandpur, compiled them into various granths, and then gone to Hazur Sahib. That's, what he's implying, but most of the theory is provided by Sardar Kapoor Singh. Gone to Hazur Sahib and completed them there, or their successors would have completed them there. Maybe one of these compositions, where there was a general concurrence among them, had the date of 1698, and then suddenly these successive scribes started copying that date into the Granth, even though 1698 had long passed.
It is possible, just due to, of course, mistakening and like we share all the time. It's just lost in translation. It's possible that uh, such a such a thing could have occurred at 1698 in particular, where it's baffling that should even anything Khalsa be mentioned then in the Sarbala Granth, it's quite questionable, of course, to say that how this could have translated into anything that would have been the writing of Dasampita.
Also brings another aspect down here is that, I think Professor Harbant Singh of the Sikh Encyclopedia side, even he mentions that it has many compositions within it which were written after Guru Gobind Singh Ji, almost 50 years after the Guru, but they're accepted as being Guru Kit. So there's a lot of confusion down there. But then many individuals argue Baba Banda Singh made copies of it, or that even Baba Gurbakh Singh made copies of it. Those theories fall flat on their face when the most prolific researcher of the Granth, Harnam Das, claims that for the first time it came into Punjab in 1803. So that brings us to the second question, is that why is it a Gupta text? Why didn't the Guru proclaim it among the Panth, and why only now are we learning about it, even though many people claim that due to the British it was hidden?
Yeah, that's a path that like tends to be taken as well, due to British this, due to British that. You mentioned that Harbant Singh was sharing in the encyclopedia as well. It always comes to my mind as well. There was like a reference to some work that was written by someone Krishna, I believe, in 1719, which is in there. A stanza reference is in there near the end of the Sarbala Granth. It just doesn't add up. And you also go on to the fact that had copies been written or even shared by Banda Singh, there's no really reference or evidence of it being distributed to Punjab when he entered Hisar in October of 1709, right?
Right, and why Harnam Das claims this to be Guru Kirt is anyone's guess, but it might be that because the Udasis had a long run control of Hazur Sahib, maybe they were the ones who finally finished this Granth and started bringing it into the Punjab. Otherwise, there is no evidence that this is Guru Kirt. Because, I mean, even if you look at the Hazur Sahib tradition, Hazura Singh is the first Akali to make a comprehensive, study of it. And he calls it Guru Kirt because it mentions the 1698 date. But other than that, his references are as equally vague as Santa Singh's, that this line matches with that line, which is in that Granth, which is in that Granth. So there's no other stronger criteria other than, accepted on blind faith.
Yeah, it's that blind faith thing that really got against people, of course, during the era of the early 1900s to study it. I mean, by Singh Nabha also agrees with Pandit Nerotam, sorry, as well. It's quite elusive in its contents. The one once again, I'm citing Harbans Singh. It keeps coming to me. It's that the the phrase or the signature, the sign off of Guru Gobind Singh, it's well, it doesn't match whatever's being shared, the contents of the Sarbal Granth, but supposedly because it's 1698, it has to be Guru Kirt, right?
Well, that's the thing. And I mean, even Sardar Kapoor Singh had this belief that there was a Granth, maybe Samund Sagar Granth or something similar, created at Anandapur. And afterwards, Sikhs are trying to relive that glory by creating Dasam Granths and Sarblo Granths, but basically, there is no general concurrence in the Panth as to what is Guru Kirt and what is not. And it's creating an unnecessary debate, unnecessary war, which we shouldn't even be fighting among ourselves.
Completely unnecessary. I agree with you there. It's just not worth our time. We really, as a Panthik whole, as a stance, have better things to do. But supposedly this is here, and it pervades and it goes in and out here and there. It's quite unfortunate. I see it as quite detrimental just to even be bringing it up, or just keeping just stuck on this phase, right?
Yep, that's the thing. So, regarding a conclusion on the modern Nihang lineage, as far as we are concerned, the modern lineage does not effectively correlate with the historic lineage. It should be Shida Misl Buddha Dal rather than Shida Misl Dharna Dal.
Right. That's where the stance is right now. There's no accurate correlation to what's being shared today, but for some reason it pervades. And but as far as we know, it's Nawab Kapoor Singh Virk and Sardar Jassa Singh Ahluwalia, and that's the true and honestly sole existence of what Buddha Dal as a military organization had stood. But it's there's been a spiraling now, and it's the Nihang in general, the claim of the sort of I like to share the control or the commandment over just having Nihang lineage as a whole is specifically Buddha Dal. It's there's more questions than answers.
And if I remember correctly, the book is available from Sikh National Archives, Canada. It's for free. Commentary on the Sikh Gurdwaras Act 1925 by Dr. Kashmir Singh, and it was actually given in writing by the Hazur Sahib Committee and the Patna Sahib Committee during the Dharam Yudh Morcha, that after the Sikh Gurdwaras Act is implemented, nationwide, they would be more than happy to come work under that act. They would place the takhts under that act, and they would also be more than happy to install, scholarly committees to study their traditions and rites and authenticate which ones are factual and which ones are not. So even that consensus was achieved back then, which unfortunately has been forgotten today.
That is true. Actually, I'd seen that this the with the Gurdwara Reforms Act being passed, that there was a consensus across the subcontinent for this to happen. With this is, I believe, Akali Hazura Singh, right?
No, not Hazura Singh. Hazura Singh would have been dead by that time. It might be actually another Hazura Singh. I remember it's either Joginder Singh Moni or another one called whose last name was Tupia. I can't really remember other than that.
Okay.
But unfortunately, the consensus today is lost. As far as we can tell, the necessity to study history as it is lost. And we have all these fantastic tales running around, but none of them are real, and they're doing injustice to the true Akalis and the true Nihangs who died for us historically.
Right. It's once again it's coming to me as what Bhai Khan Singh Nambad shared. It's the Nihang who is has no regard. It's immediate no regard for life. Are always ready for martyrdom. But it's this it's this narrative here that's it's being twisted, and it's quite unfortunate. The conclude the sorry the consensus which came about from the Gurdwara Reforms Act, it's lost, and while it was there, and now it's everything's being misconstrued, and it's quite unfortunate. Really, it is.
So, as a historian, what steps would you like people to take to learn the truth?
As a historian myself, and I like historiography as well. It's something that I'm really keen in. It's one thing to look at things, but it's another thing to dissect. And it's always our analyses that sometimes get the best of us in what we're trying to share. But there's definitely things that we need to keep in mind. For me, the always biggest factor has been what can we share and use dissecting the path of Gurmat. And this is something that I genuinely believe needs to be achieved by all. We are the Sarbat Khalsa for a reason, and we are forever united. We are the one Panth. So there's just no gain from even having these sort of unnecessary arguments myself. So through the lens of history, we need to understand the fact that, as I've shared before, it's that history and our understanding gets better over time, and this is something that we all need to play a part in, especially in an era now where Indian propaganda is absolutely massive. And this is something that we collectively as a whole need to come together and stand on as our one panth, right?
Obviously, the true history needs to be brought out, but whether it will or whether it not, only time will tell, because people take very emotional stances on these matters.
Yeah, definitely. I'm constantly sharing all the time. We are in deep need of a Singh Sabha Leher 2.0. That's just where we're at right now, and it seems as though this could be a part two coming up, but it might be every so 110, 120 years that the Sangat falls into this sort of loophole.
That's right. And the original Akalis ended up inspiring Baba Dayal Singh, the original Nirankaris, Baba Balak Singh of Hazaro. They ended up inspiring many revivalists who ultimately paved the way for the Lahore Singh Sabha. So there is a connection down there, a legacy, but it's not the legacy which we have been led to believe today.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Thank you very much for joining us. We apologize for wasting your time.
No, there once again, not at all. No, this is great. It's always fun coming on here, and it's great to share. And obviously, the dissection done by yourself is always amazing. And definitely just looking forward to more. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.